I've been looking for philosophical books for our times because I think a profound reflection about what happens nowadays is simply a need. We have to do that to understand something, what happens around in a more, profound way. So I've chosen Ferdydurke by Witold Gombrowicz because this book has been for a long time with me. A long time means more or less 20 years or maybe more. The book has a philosophical meaning, but it has also a literary form because it's a sort of novel written in a sort of surrealistic language. So you have the surface structure of a novel that is literary, and you have a deep structure that is philosophical, with a philosophical and social meaning that I think it is important nowadays, although the book was written 80 years ago, more or less. So why this book is interesting for nowadays and for our, I would say, social situation, because it shows different dimensions of social life, including the internet life. Although, of course, the author had no idea about the internet because it was written a long time ago, but the mechanisms he describes, social mechanisms, cultural mechanisms, political, a little bit, political mechanisms, are as if they function all the time, I think. So this is the reason why I recommend this book, because written some time ago, it shows us the reality that is our reality nowadays. And I'm not talking just about the world here, I mean, real world, but also, or perhaps the most importantly nowadays, the internet world, or what we can see on the internet. So the story, the plot is kind of strange because it depicts a guy, an adult person, that someday is as if kidnapped and taken into a high school reality. And so this is the plot. But the plot is a kind of pretext to show these social mechanisms of pressure, oppression, power in a very, I would say, peculiar form. So the main protagonist is taken into a strange reality in which he can see that he is under pressure of very many sources. Education in the first instance, but also the pressure to make something with his life. And the something, the author, Gombrowicz, very often says that is form yourself. Get mature. I mean, he insists that we individuals all the time are under some kind of pressure or different type of pressure to become mature, to become responsible, to become competent, to become an authority figure in some area, to become professional. But at the same time, we cannot make it. It is as if pretending to be adult, pretending to be responsible, pretending to be mature, pretending to play this role, social role, or political role. But inside we are not such guys. In other words, what the society or community expects from us is a sort of task that is imposed upon us all the time. And we, individuals, who think that, for example, I have to have some role in my society, I have to show something to the people outside. We have all the time a kind of job to do, and this job is to show who we are, and the show to the society, show to other people, is the work we have to do. And this type of work is described by Gombrowicz in this book and other of his books. So what is this job? Well, to produce form. Form is a kind of artistic term that means that your work or yourself as a kind of work is to obtain, to receive a final formula. I'm this, I'm that. And this job to do that is challenging thing, especially when you want to keep your individuality, because your individuality or your special character as you as a person, as an individual person, must not mean that you copy some roles or imitate some forms that exist around. So, for example, when you think that you are a liberal, you are a Democrat, you are a feminist or whatever, and you copy the type of roles that these movements impose upon you, you are not doing this job that Gombrowicz was talking about, because you are just imitating what other people have imposed upon you. So it is not about that. It is not about this type of oppression, this type of liberation, this type of work of individuals in society. It is very different. So what is different? Different is that this job is trying to make something really individual, something unique, that is what you would like to call your authenticity. But authenticity does not mean that you repeat the already existing norms or already existing standards. It means that you should provide us with something very particular, very singular, which is super difficult to do. So it is not a job, I would say, for everybody. But, well, what about the mass culture? Here is a kind. This book is a protest against this mass factor, mass element in culture, in society, and in politics, because it is an attempt to pay attention to that if you join some movement, join some group, join some ideology, actually you are formed by somebody else. It is not your formation. It is not your individual work over your, I would say, private, individual, unique vision of the world. So why it is important nowadays? Take a look at the internet. Quite often on the internet you have thousands and thousands of lifestyles, celebrities showing what to do, politicians telling you how to vote, or some authority figures that exist in the public world, and they are telling you what is good, what's bad, and so on. And then you have these thousands or maybe millions followers who follow very often uncritically some idea, some person, some lifestyle, some idea, some ideology, whatever. And so the internet, which is a wonderful tool, because it gives opportunity to do so many things. At the same time, I think if we would like to interpret from this point of view the book, from this point of view it's pretty strange, because we have a feeling that we are the creators of our image, because we are sending a photo on Facebook, or we send a comment someplace else, on the Instagram, or things like that. But from this point of view, we are not. We are just imitators. We copy certain behaviors and certain lifestyle very often. So we are not producing that. No, we are just recreating, imitating the certain standards according to the expectations of other people. So the expectation of other people, expectation of the viewers, expectation of the people who are going to listen to us, is this strong mechanism that Gombrowicz is studying by means of his literary language. So he would say, and this is the difference between when we are talking very often nowadays about oppression, in the political sense, he would say oppression is something unavoidable. You cannot get out of oppression in the political sense, social sense, cultural sense. It's a myth. You can get rid of this. You have always some form of oppression. I mean, all the time in democracy, in, theocracy, whatever, independently of the political system and independently of the cultural fashion, you will always under some kind of pressure. You will always be oppressed in some way, and it's okay. What is not okay is that this oppression is stifling you, is, I would say, too big to make you a sort of independent judgment. So oppression or systematic or systemic, we use this term, systemic oppression. You will always have that. But your job as an individual person is to know that there are different types of micro oppressions everywhere. For example, in the classroom, a big part of the story is in the classroom, as if to suggest that education, schooling, teachers, all this stuff is a sort of cultural oppression. How so? For example, when the teachers tell in a very, I would say, how to say that? Okay, oppressive way, let's do it. Oppressive way, they are telling you what is good, what is bad, what authors are good authors, what literature is good literature, what behavior is good behavior, and they are repeating, and after some time, the young people and older people, they have been told that this schemes of behaviors, this type of actions are good, and you have to do it, and you follow this. Gombrowicz is saying that in each and every moment when you interact with people, and it does not have to be politics, everywhere, actually you have some kind of expectation from other people and some kind of micro-oppression from other people and some kind of limits by other people where your internal, your intentions, your thoughts, your wishes, your desires are as if controlled, are as if blocked, are as if limited. And your job is to articulate them, and this is also very interesting, because you articulate them thinking that you are doing that in the name of your authentic self, that you have something inside that is real, that is really yours, that is really, the very idea of yourself, and you want to manifest this into the world or articulate it in this form or another. Gombrowicz is interesting to say, I think in a very profound way, that it is not so. If you are thinking that you are here, someplace here, I don't know, here, you are authentic, and you try to show by means of your own form, by means of your own articulation, this insight to the world, you're going to have a problem, because there is nothing inside. Because everything you think is inside has been taken from the outside. The society before has told you what should be inside. So if you are saying, it's my authentic something, well, you've taken this from the society that has told you before, when you were a kid, for example, that this is the real you, this is the real authentic something inside, and you are repeating that. For example, language. You are using any kind of idea you want, any kind of articulations you want, but you are using language that is not yours. So you are saying, it's my idea, myself, my real needs, by the language that is not real. You've taken the language. And I'm not saying just ethnic language, but any language, any form of talking, communication with other people. Language is not your private thing. Language is always public thing, social thing, communal thing. So you are using communal things by saying your private things? Wait a second. Language is not just a grammar, lexicon, words that you are using. Language is something more profound. It has, for example, ideas that are formulated by this language. You change language, you modify the language, you modify ideas at the same time. So when you are using a language by means of which you want to show your authentic insight, well, maybe this authentic insight is also social. Maybe it is also a part of the culture you've been living in. So you are using some part of the cultural tradition that has told you that this or that is authentic. And then you're saying, well, it's mine, it's authentic because it's mine. Well, Gombrowicz would say it does not work this way. Quite often, he says, quite often people think that there is, residuum, space inside that is not public, that is not publicly created. It's yours. It's individually yours. But he would say, well, maybe not so. Maybe everything what we have in our brains, in our souls, and everything we want to articulate by any type of language, actually is culturally determined in some sense. So you may ask, so was he talking about cultural determinism, that everything depends upon the society outside? He would say no. Your strife, your fight, your effort to make a difference does not have to be social. Because there are very many people who are passive, who do nothing with this sort of individual expression, and they are okay with that. And you have a choice here. Your choice, perhaps this choice is also cultural determined in some sense, but maybe not, because some people do these choices, but make these choices, but some people do not do that. Okay, so anyway, he would say that is this tragic existential dilemma. First, why should we try to resist these micro oppressions or big oppressions? And second, why should we think that we ought to try in our own ways? And in the name of what? And if we say, well, in the name of our individual freedom, because we want to preserve and cultivate something that is irrepeatibly ours, he would say, I'm not sure. I want to give you my understanding of the world, my vision of the world. At the same time, I am not really sure if it is mine. If I'm not like, parrot repeating what my culture wants from me. Perhaps my culture wants from me this kind of rebellion, wants from me this type of articulation. And it's not my idea, that my culture is telling me to do that. And then, if so, my culture is doing exactly what in the novel you have this plot that an adult guy is as if kidnapped, taken into the high school reality where teachers and the system is telling him what to do, like a teenager. So the suggestion of the book is, think if the culture generally is not doing something similar with everybody. you know, treating us as kids that need to play some social roles this way or another. We think this is our choice, and we think that we should do it because we have our own, say about that. But he would say, well, let's think about that. And this is the philosophical dimension of this literary work.